Hello and welcome to the week of April 13th in microeconomics. I hope that you are staying safe and doing well, and I hope you have a chance to look out for the welfare of others, particularly your family, friends, and neighbors. I know together we'll get through this. This week we'll focus on the fourth of the four market structures. This week it's monopolistic competition. In addition, we're going to have the second part of the financial crisis, and this is the response taken by the federal government and Federal Reserve to avoid a Great Depression. So let's take a look at the agenda for the week. I'd like you to review the learning materials I've posted for monopolistic competition and then the response to the financial crisis. When you're done with that, there are two discussion board questions, one on monopolistic competition and the other on the response to the financial crisis. In both cases, I'd like you to respond initially by Thursday at 11, and then respond to one or more of your colleagues by Sunday at 11. So there are three questions in each category that I'd like you to give some thought to and answer, but that's after you've reviewed the materials I've posted. In addition, I've posted a graded assignment on monopolistic competition. And as is the case with all graded assignments, you can take it as many times as you want, and your highest grade will be the one that's counted. So with that said, let's take a look at the materials I've posted. And one thing I want to emphasize is if at any time you have any questions or problems with this course or anything else at MCPHS University, please email me and I'll do everything I can to support you. Okay, so this week we're going to take a look at monopolistic competition and product differentiation. They really go hand in hand because a big part of what monopolistic competition is in fact differentiating a product or service from something that's similar but not identical. So when we look at the spectrum of where we are, we have talked about all of the others. We've talked about perfect competition, we've talked about oligopoly, we've talked about monopoly, and now this week we're going to talk about monopolistic competition. There are many, many industries and firms that fall into this category. And as I've mentioned many times before, firms really would like to avoid being in a highly competitive or perfectly competitive marketplace, because at that point, it's only cost leaders that survive and the margins are small, the profit is small. So if possible, firms like to be able to stay in another market structure where they have some control over pricing. And so one of the areas is monopolistic competition, where through a variety of ways firms try to differentiate themselves. Sometimes it's through branding, sometimes it's through advertising, sometimes it's through location, sometimes it's through service. But there's a variety of different ways that companies can differentiate themselves. And what they want to create, either real or perceived, is that there's something different about their product or service. And usually what they want in return for that difference is a premium, a little bit higher prices than you'd find in a commodity or perfectly competitive marketplace. So here's the characteristics that we'd expect. Typically a large number of firms, each firm produces a differentiated product. They might be very similar, but they're differentiated. And the firm can compete on quality, location, marketing, and sometimes price, although they try to avoid price competitions. The other thing, like with perfect competition, is firms and consumers are free to enter and exit the market. So we often see lots of companies, and it's relatively easy to enter or leave the market. One of the key things that you find is differentiation of the product or the service. So, and that basically is all about trying to create either a real or perceived difference in the product or service that I offer, so that, again, consumers are willing to pay a premium. Sometimes it's quality, sometimes it's service, sometimes it's just branding and advertising. And all of this, so you see firms in this industry spend lots of money trying to differentiate themselves and create that brand loyalty or brand awareness that people are willing to pay a little bit extra for. Coca-Cola, Apple, Tesla, things of that nature. Generally speaking, there are no or low barriers to entry and exit. There are many examples of monopolistic competition that exists. So last week, we talked about oligopolies, and there was something called the HHI index, and that deals with market concentration. If it's 1,800 or above, then for the top 4 firms, then we expect that that's going to be an oligopoly. But when it comes to monopolistic competition, we don't see that, because what we see is competition, right? And so we typically see lots of firms, none of which dominate the marketplace, all of whom are focused on being a little bit different, a little bit better than their competition. So many competitors, products are similar but not identical, free entry and exit. And the key thing is differentiation. And so there's typically, unlike oligopolies where there is tacit collusion, this really doesn't exist in this industry. And so we often see advertising and marketing as a big player in monopolistic competition. And essentially the role is to create brand awareness, create differentiation to increase demand. Firms do not want to compete based on price. They want to compete based on, I can do something better than the other products that are available on the market. So there's controversy about advertising. There is kind of 2 main schools of thought. One is that it provides information and increases awareness of products and services. The other is that it creates false demand, that we create demand for things, services, and products that really is not necessary. But whatever you believe, the fact is that advertising is a key part of things in this segment of industries. So we see ads on TV. If they're not monopolies, they're typically going to be monopolistic competition or oligopolies. So certainly soft drinks, pharmaceutical industry, automobiles. You can go down the list of the things that you might see on television are typically going to fall into this category. So is it information, or is it just to get you to spend something that you don't need? That is going to continue, that whole controversy, but it's here with this industry. So branding, right? Spending money to create brand awareness and keeping brand awareness, a big part of this industry as well. Very expensive, but very valuable. Excuse me. So here's some examples of companies that have tremendous brand awareness. All right, so let's take a look at some other things I posted. So in addition to the PowerPoint slide, there's a couple of short videos which I'd like you to listen to or watch. They're going to be very helpful to your learning. So let's look at the other topic for the week, which is the response to the financial crisis. So last week I asked you to get an understanding as to what the financial crisis was. This week I'm going to ask you to get an understanding as to what happened in response to the financial crisis. And what we found is that both on the fiscal and monetary side, both the US government and the Federal Reserve Bank took unprecedented actions to essentially avoid a Great Depression by intervening in the economy in an unprecedented way in 2009 and 10 and 11. We didn't expect to see that happen again, but with the coronavirus, we're seeing a very similar action. And this time it's actually at a larger scale and more quickly than it happened during the financial crisis. But let's now go back and look at, we'll come back and talk about the coronavirus later this semester. But right now we're going to talk about the financial crisis and the response to it. So the first thing I want you to do is there's an HBO special, which if you click on this link here, it's called Panic, It's the untold story, give you some insight as to how serious this problem was and what people did to respond to it. And then there's a short video on the Federal Reserve response, and then there's a couple of slides that were put together by Paul Bernanke, who was then the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank. So if you can look through those, that will give you a pretty in-depth understanding. And then I want you to respond to the discussion board question on the response to the financial crisis. What actions were taken by the federal government and the Federal Reserve Bank? Do you think the actions were appropriate? So not everybody does. There are people who criticize them for doing too much, others who criticize them for doing too little. So the third question is, what more or less could have been done? So the requirements for the week are, to go through the materials I've posted, to answer the 2 discussion board questions, and then to complete the graded assignment on monopolistic competition. So again, if there's anything I can do to be of service to you during this time, please reach out to me. I hope you remain safe.